Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today, I'd like to share with you the next chapter in the story of James and Diep, a very peaceful morning in the countryside, where emotions begin to spread slowly and gently, yet quietly touch the depths of the heart. The morning in the countryside begins with soft sunlight filtering through the leaves, casting a pale golden glow over low rooftops veiled in early mist. The air is so still that one can clearly hear the breeze softly rustling the bamboo groves along the road, and the cheerful chirping of birds calling to one another, as if waking the entire village after a long night. In that moment, Diep wakes earlier than usual. She sits on the porch, holding her phone, hesitating for a few seconds before dialing Hwin, James's mother. The call connects almost immediately. Hwin's voice on the other end is calm, warm, and familiar, carrying the gentle reassurance of a seasoned woman who always knows how to put others at ease. Diep softly asks for permission to pick up little Nee, explaining that she is nearby today and plans to take the child along with her. Hwin agrees without hesitation. A clear note of joy slips into her voice, mixed with a quiet longing she cannot quite hide. Over the past few days, the once quiet house has been filled with Nee's laughter. The sound of tiny footsteps running around the yard, her innocent questions, and her clear, cheerful calls of grandma have made the house feel warmer than it has in a long time. The child's presence has quietly filled the emptiness Hwin had long tried to keep hidden in her heart. After ending the call, Diep slings her woven basket over her shoulder and steps out onto the road. The familiar village path stretches out before her, flanked by lush green rice fields, with cornfields ripening on the distant hills. As Diep walks, she unexpectedly runs into James. He stops his car, his gaze resting on Diep's small frame and the basket on her shoulder. He asks a few questions, his voice carrying a natural, genuine concern. When he learns that Diep plans to pick up Nee and take her along to harvest corn, his brow tightens slightly. James begins to worry. In his mind, farm work, though familiar to adults, can be tiring for a child like Nee. He worries about the sun and wind irritating her skin, about the dust in the fields making her exhausted. Then he thinks of his mother, Hwin, who would be alone at home. Though she says nothing, James knows how much joy Nee's presence has brought her. After a moment of quiet reflection, James gently suggests that Nee stay with her grandmother for a few more days. Diep pauses when she hears this. In that brief moment, she is torn by hesitation. Part of her wants to take her child along, to see Nee laughing among the fields, to let her understand and grow closer to the simple life of the countryside. Yet another part of her understands James's worries, and Hwin's quiet loneliness as well. In the end, Diep gives a small nod. She believes it is the best choice for now, for her child, for the grandmother, and perhaps for herself too. Diep continues on her way, this time alone. She goes to the neighboring village to harvest corn. Under the gentle late-morning sun, the cornfields stretch endlessly, green leaves whispering in the breeze. Diep bends down, her hand swiftly breaking off the ripe ears of corn, movements so familiar they require almost no thought. Yet even as the work continues steadily, her mind keeps drifting back to little Nee. Images of her child appear with surprising clarity, her smile, her eyes, and the innocent questions she asks each day. After finishing the harvest, Diep selects some young corn and carefully brings it home to boil. The scent of cooked corn fills the small kitchen, evoking a sense of warmth and closeness. She sets aside a portion, planning to bring it to Nee when she has the chance. The rest, she takes to the market to sell. The rural market is as lively as ever, filled with the sounds of buyers and sellers, bargaining voices mingling with familiar laughter. Diep stands among the crowd, her hands busily weighing corn, her voice responding to each customer. Yet amid the familiar bustle, Diep feels an unexpected emptiness inside. For the first time in many days, she becomes acutely aware of her child's absence at her side. There is no longer Nee's cheerful chatter, no small hand tugging at her sleeve whenever she turns away. A deep, quiet stillness settles into Diep's heart, gentle, yet persistent. She suddenly realizes that even though her child is only temporarily away, the absence alone is enough to weigh heavily on a mother's heart, carrying with it a silent longing that has not yet found a name. At home, little Me sat alone on her familiar small mat in the middle of the living room, carefully fitting together colorful toy pieces. Her hands moved swiftly, her face bent low, eyes sparkling with the focus and innocence of a child completely absorbed in her own little world. For Nee, that moment felt peaceful. The house was quiet, filled only with the soft clicking sounds of the toy pieces touching each other, and the comforting sense of safety that came from knowing her grandmother was nearby. Suddenly, the door opened gently. An elderly man stepped inside. He paused when he saw Nee playing on the floor, and something unspoken flickered in his eyes. On a face marked by time, a kind smile slowly appeared as he walked closer. He bent down, curiously looking at the colorful toys in front of the child, then casually picked one up, an almost instinctive gesture of an adult watching a child at play. But to Nee, everything felt completely different. When she looked up, her eyes met an unfamiliar face. It was not her grandmother. Not her father or her mother. It was a man she had never seen before. In the simple, innocent thinking of a child, the sudden appearance of a stranger made her freeze. Nee stared at the man, then at the toy in his hand. A vague sense of fear rose inside her, spreading quickly through her small heart. Her heart began to pound. A deep, instinctive unease took hold. In her mind, only one thought existed: this stranger was taking her toy. She didn't understand what was happening, but a child's instinct told her to protect what was familiar, to hold on to the small world she knew. Her hands clenched tightly, her breathing grew quicker, and her eyes were filled with both fear and caution. Despite being frightened, Nee tried to be brave. She suddenly stood up, reaching out toward the man. Her voice trembled, yet rang out louder than expected, as if she were trying to reassure herself. She stopped the man, questioning him with a seriousness that only a child could muster. In that moment, she was no longer a helpless little girl, but someone trying her best to protect herself and the toys she loved. The elderly man was stunned. He had no idea what was happening. He had only thought he was playfully interacting with a child, never imagining he would frighten her so deeply. He quickly put the toy down, his eyes filled with confusion and regret. He did not know that the child standing before him was his own granddaughter. Just like Nee, he was completely unaware of the invisible bond of blood that connected them. Meanwhile, to Nee, the man in front of her was still just a stranger. She did not know, and could not possibly know, that he was her grandfather, James's father. All she felt was fear and confusion. The distance between the two people, though only a few steps apart, felt vast, created by the absence of explanation and connection. At that very moment, her grandmother was not at home. Just a brief lapse, a tiny gap in the usual watchful care, was enough for everything to go awry. Overwhelmed by fear and uncertainty, Nee instinctively stepped back, then turned away from her familiar spot. Her small feet moved quietly, carrying with them a growing sense of unease. No one heard a call. No one noticed the change in time. The man was still confused, not yet understanding the child's reaction, not yet able to stop her. In that brief instant, Nee had already left the space she knew so well. The house, once peaceful and warm, suddenly became frighteningly silent. That silence was not just the absence of a child's laughter, but a sign of an emptiness that had quietly opened, subtle yet deeply unsettling, as if something precious had just slipped out of reach of everyone in that home. Evening fell very slowly. The last light of day bathed the village road in gold, stretching slender shadows across the dry ground. James returned earlier than usual. On his face, after days filled with worries and responsibilities, a rare sense of ease appeared. He stopped by Diep's place, offered a gentle smile, and invited her to go into the city for a short outing. The suggestion came unexpectedly, yet it made both of them pause in a quiet, private moment. It had been a long time since James and Diep had allowed themselves to think about spending time together, free from fields, markets, and the small daily worries that never seemed to end. For Diep, his invitation felt like a rare breath of air amid endless, tireless days. She smiled and nodded in agreement, a soft joy rising quietly in her heart. She hurried inside to change clothes, choosing an outfit while imagining a simple but meaningful evening, one where they could sit side by side, talking about nothing in particular, just like they used to. But before that happiness could fully take shape, the phone suddenly rang. The familiar sound echoed sharply through the quiet room, making Diep freeze. She picked up the phone and saw James's mother's name on the screen. A vague sense of unease crept into her heart from the very first second. As soon as she put the phone to her ear, she heard the woman's trembling voice. Gone was the usual calm, the warm and steady tone she knew so well. In its place were broken, hurried questions. She asked whether Diep had already picked up little Nie. She said that Nie's toys were still there, lying untouched on the mat just as they had been in the afternoon, but Nie herself was nowhere to be found. Her voice choked, filled with undisguised panic. Diep went numb. In that instant, all the sounds around her seemed to disappear. She hurriedly insisted that she had not picked up her child, that she had been in the neighboring village all day and had not returned even once. Her words spilled out quickly and chaotically, as if she were trying to calm herself as much as anyone else. But the more she spoke, the colder her heart felt. James stood right beside her, hearing every word of the conversation. He said nothing, only looked at Diep, then stared into the empty space ahead. His face visibly paled. In his mind, fragments of the day began to surface, disjointed yet haunting. That morning, Diep had said she would pick up Nie. He had suggested that the child stay with her grandmother for a few more days. Then the image of his elderly father suddenly appeared, the man who had just returned home, meeting for the first time a grandchild he had never known existed. Those fragments, which once seemed harmless, now suddenly fit together into a complete and terrifying picture. James felt his heart being tightly squeezed. A chilling truth slowly became clear. Little Nie had disappeared inside the very house that was supposed to be the safest place of all. Not on the street. Not somewhere unfamiliar. But at home, where her grandmother was, where family was. Diep let the phone slip loosely from her hand. She stood frozen, her mind completely blank. Panic surged violently inside her, dragging along guilt and fear. Images of Nie appeared with painful clarity, from her smile in the morning to her innocent eyes as she left her mother's arms. Diep didn't dare think any further, didn't dare imagine what might have happened to her child during those hours. James was no better. He stood there, motionless, as if all his strength had been drained away. He understood that a single decision, one that had seemed reasonable at the time, had unintentionally pushed everything beyond control. A misunderstood encounter between a fragile child and a grandfather she had never known had opened a terrifying gap, a brief moment of neglect that was enough for tragedy to unfold. Evening, which should have been the most peaceful time of day, had now become the starting point of overwhelming fear. Inside the small house, James and Diep stood side by side, yet between them lay a heavy silence. No one said another word, because both of them understood that from this moment on, everything had changed. Little Nie was no longer where she was supposed to be, and the fragile piece of their family had just been torn apart by a truth too painful to bear. Night fell very slowly, but fear spread faster than anything else. Darkness wrapped itself around the house, seeping into every corner, turning what was once familiar into something cold and strangely distant. No one spoke a word, yet the same confusion was reflected in every pair of eyes. A heavy silence blanketed the family, as if even the smallest sound might shatter the last fragments of composure they had left. Diep sat quietly, her hands tightly clasped together until they turned pale. In her mind, images from the entire day replayed over and over: the peaceful morning in the countryside, the phone call asking permission to pick up her child, the moment of hesitation before she nodded at James's suggestion. Every tiny detail now appeared with cruel clarity. She dared not think further, dared not ask herself where her child was or how frightened she might be. Even the briefest thought was enough to make her heart constrict and her breathing grow heavy. James leaned against the wall, his gaze lost in the darkness. He felt the full weight of that morning's decision pressing down on his chest. At the time, he had only thought about the child's safety, about his mother's happiness, believing that letting little Nie stay home a few more days was the sensible choice. He never imagined that such a seemingly small decision would become the starting point of the greatest crisis of their lives. A sense of helplessness crept into every thought, leaving him unable to blame anyone, and unable to forgive himself. In another corner of the house, the grandmother slowly sank into a seat, her shoulders trembling. She recalled the image of Nie playing with her building blocks on the floor, remembered the child's innocent smile and the clear, cheerful voice calling out to her. She could not believe that in just one brief moment of inattention, that peace had vanished. The house that once echoed with laughter was now filled only with a painful stillness. Each toy lying motionless on the mat felt like a silent reminder, deepening the ache of regret in her heart. No one said it aloud, but they all understood that what lay ahead would be a long journey, filled with tears and anxiety. It was not just a search for a missing child, but a journey into their deepest fears, into questions that had no easy answers. Every minute that passed in the endless night carried a suffocating sense of waiting, as if time itself were deliberately testing their endurance. That night, no one slept. The lights in the house remained on, like a fragile hope refusing to fade. Each person carried their own private worry, yet they all shared the same wish: as long as little Nie was safe, they could endure anything else. No matter what the days ahead might bring, no matter how many tears it would cost, they knew they had no choice but to move forward. A very small decision made that morning, one that seemed harmless, had led to the greatest upheaval of their lives. And as the night closed in, that fear remained, waiting for an answer somewhere ahead. If you'd like to continue following this emotional journey, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the upcoming videos.
Xin chào tất cả mọi người đã quay trở lại với kênh của mình nhé.